These rolling knife sharpeners have been incredibly viral. They've been all over social media. I have decided that I'm going to test one. I'm going to help you see if these sharpeners are actually worth the cash or if they're just social media trash. Here we go. Let's sharpen some knives. If you're not familiar with these sharpeners, the way they work is they have a magnetic block like this that holds the knife at an angle on the table. So that block sits on the side of the knife like this. The block sits on the table, and therefore it holds your knife at an angle so that you can sharpen the blade at a consistent angle with the vertical roller. The vertical roller looks like this. So basically you have a drum, you have a rubber O-ring that gives it traction on the table, and then you've got a disc that spins along the blade of the knife as you roll this thing back and forth. So I'm going to check it out with this knife. So this knife is one of my kitchen knives I stole directly from the kitchen. If I turn it, I want to see if I can get you to see this. There should be some visible kind of glinting along that edge. It is pretty dull. I purposely let this one get dull for the sake of the video. It's not an expensive knife, but I know it does get sharp because I've sharpened it with my other sharpeners. I'm actually going to time this and see how long it takes me to get an edge that I'm satisfied with on this knife. Timer is rolling. I will leave it down there in the corner. You have two choices on cutting angle for this knife, for this sharpener. I'm going to kind of eyeball this and see where this one, it works if you hold it kind of up to the light and look down it. Here's the setup. I've got the sharpener on the blade. I'm going to start it. So I wanted to show this, even though I know better, because if you don't have the blade perfectly centered on the sharpener, it wants to rock off like that. So I'm going to run it more toward the exact center of the blade, which keeps it from coming off the magnets. The magnets are pretty strong, but they're not incredibly strong. So it is possible for it to come off, which is dangerous. Now I'm going to go to the other side. Ideally, you would count exactly how many strokes you did. I didn't count there. We're going to do about 10 on this side. What I can say is that this takes pretty much all the guesswork out of using a sharpener. One of the hardest things if you're using a whetstone is getting the angle of the knife right on the whetstone and getting that to happen consistently to get a good sharp edge. This literally takes all the guesswork out of it because the sharpener is doing it all for me. And there's very little skill that I have to have. Now I'm noticing it's starting to feel different, which I'm hoping means I've got a pretty good edge going on. One drawback to these sharpeners is that they are pretty expensive, right? I've been kind of shocked at the prices that these sharpeners command. They're a lot more expensive than a whetstone. They're more expensive than some mechanized sharpeners out there. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the finer side now and see if I can polish that up all the way. And then we will finish up and I'll test it and we can look at how well we actually did here. So I spent 10 minutes sharpening this knife and I stopped there. And the reason that I stopped there is that 10 minutes is a long time to take to sharpen a knife. I have some other sharpeners that are way faster than that I'm going to review. So we're going to go ahead and test this knife and see how we did. First of all, I'll do the paper test. If I'm going through the paper, you can see there are sharp spots and there are dull spots. Okay, so that was definitely a dull spot. There's a sharp spot. If I keep going, there's another dull spot. I'm going to test the sharp spots on some leather here. So I'm going to basically just kind of slice into. So there is some pretty sharp spots, right? On the sharp spots, they did get sharp, but the dull spots are also very dull, right? So given the fact that this was a relatively normal kitchen knife, it was no duller than most people's kitchen knives are after they have neglected them for a while, which most people don't sharpen their kitchen knives a lot. I'm not super impressed with this. I want to try some other knife blade shapes to see if it works okay with those. And then we'll talk final conclusions on this. But so far, I'm not as impressed as the rest of social media with this sharpener. What I have here is 3 different pocket knife blade shapes, and I want to see if these will even go on this sharpener. Most of these are going to be in the 20-degree range, so I'm going to stick one on here and just show you what that looks like. So first of all, I'm having trouble with the thumb stud, right? So I can move it over and I can get it off of the thumb stud, but I really have to be careful where it is on there, because if the blade is rather thin, this sticks up on the side there, and you can see the sharpener would hit the block instead of the blade in that circumstance. So the blade has to be up over the edge of the magnet block like that, like so. And that would actually work okay for that particular blade shape. You kind of have to do it around in a circle to keep it on that curved blade. So if I just go straight, you can see I end up with a gap between the blade and the sharpener there where I'm hitting it back there. So I kind of have to roll the sharpener around the blade shape, but it does work. Let's try the Kaiser. So this one actually is a little easier because this one doesn't have a thumb stud. So as long as I put this up off of the table far enough, that works pretty good. This is more of a curve, so you can see I have to work even a little bit harder to get that knife sharpener to stay on there, and then the knife wants to move on the magnet a little bit. So not super great for that blade shape. I'm doing this to be a little bit contrary. Here's my Microtech Amphibian. It's a pretty hefty recurve, and you can see that sharpener doesn't really hit the center of the recurve very well. I mean, you can kind of work it around the curves, but given that really deep blade belly, I'm not going to even run that along there because it's changing the angle too much. So as I run this out toward the tip of that knife with that deep of a blade belly, it wants to dig into the tip at a different angle, and you can see I would be losing my cutting angle at that point. So I'd be grinding this portion of the blade at a shallow angle, and then I would be grinding the back portion of the blade here where the tip is at a much steeper angle. So it doesn't really work for pocket knives very well. This is mostly a kitchen knife sharpener. Other things I wanted to point out, other than the time it took to sharpen, is that you can't really see it very well, but as I'm feeling this with my thumb after sharpening one kitchen knife, right? This portion of the sharpener is much smoother now than the center. So I can feel that this had already started to wear out after sharpening just one knife. And given the fact that these are pretty expensive, I mean, it's not uncommon to see these things for $50 to $100. That is just not the level of durability. I mean, I want to be able to sharpen my knives for several years with this. I don't want to have to replace it after 2 or 3 knives. Now, some of these do have replaceable discs. So if you do buy one, I recommend getting one that has the replaceable discs. I will say the biggest plus of having a sharpener like this is that it takes all the guesswork out of sharpening. If I am in fact sharpening a kitchen knife with this knife, I can literally just put it on there. I don't have to worry about changing the angle. I don't have to worry about, getting the edge ruined. I know that this is going to give me a very consistent edge over and over again, and I don't have to really learn anything about knife sharpening. So if you just want something that's the easiest to use, this is definitely the most, turn off your brain and get a decently sharp knife every single time. If that's what you want, I do recommend them for that. They're much, much better than the V-type sharpeners. These V-type sharpeners, where you have like the carbide or ceramic V's, what they do is they kind of push the edge of the blade one direction and they push it back the other way. So these end up kind of ruining the edges of your knives. So if this is what you're using in the kitchen right now, this is a significant upgrade over something like that. The roller sharpener is a much better way to do it. But there are other sharpeners, like I said, that I like a lot better. And I will be doing some reviews of those. They're just much more versatile coming up in the coming months. So is it worth the cash, or is it just social media trash? I would say if you want an easy to use sharpener, you don't want to have to think about it, and you only want to sharpen kitchen knives, and you can find one of these with a replaceable disc, then I would say they're worth the cash. If you want to sharpen all your knives with them, and if you don't have one, if you're looking at one that doesn't have a replaceable end disc, I would say these are not worth it, and you're better off spending your money on something else. So those are my conclusions on this type of sharpener. Once again, William insisted on helping me with the video today. So if you like content like this, where I'm helping you figure out whether products are worth spending your money on, if you like seeing the rolling sharpener today, give a comment, give a like, please subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it. It really does help me be able to bring you cool knife stuff like this. Say goodbye, William. Bye.